It's Wednesday, October 9th at 3:45 p.m. Less than 12 hours until Hurricane Milton comes barreling into the west coast of Florida. So I live in Sarasota and evacuated. I am here in Georgia. It's actually quite beautiful here. The hotel is mobbed, so I found a little park right behind the hotel, and I wanted to talk about some things relating to grief and loss because all of us who live in Florida are experiencing this now. Some are deep into it because of previous hurricanes, Debbie and Helene. I am fortunate that I was not personally devastated by those, but many were, and here comes another one. And I wanted to talk about this because loss is loss. This is a channel about grief, and I understand everything people go through with grief after having lost my daughter to suicide. And Floridians are grieving right now. I understand how you feel. Many people in Florida are grieving right now. The loss is devastating. The anger, the despair, the shock of losing the things that are absolutely the most important in your life suddenly gone in an instant, never to return. This is grief. I have a really sick feeling in my stomach right now. We're waiting for the storm to hit. And this is not the first time I experienced it. And because it was so familiar to me, it took me back 12 years to the day that my daughter committed suicide. And I suddenly realized that there is a huge correlation between the loss of a loved one and the kind of loss that we are experiencing here in Florida, now and coming up. And this is what it reminded me of. My daughter was in ICU. Wow, I'm right near the highway. I hope you can hear me. The traffic is quite loud, even though it looks so serene here. My daughter was in ICU. They shuffled me out at about 2 o'clock in the morning because they wanted to run some tests and scans and things like that. As I was coming back in from the cafeteria, I went and tried to get something to eat. I was immediately intercepted and shuffled off to a waiting room. They told me my daughter was no longer stable and that a doctor would be coming in to talk to me. And there I was in the middle of the night alone in this waiting room, and nothing. Hours passed. No doctors ever came. No one came at all. I just waited and waited. And this is exactly what Florida is going through right now, not knowing what the outcome is going to be. There's nothing you can do, and you're just waiting. Eventually, that did not turn out well for me. Over the loudspeaker, I heard code blue ICU, and I knew that my daughter was coding, and sure enough, she was. No one ever came to me. Finally, in the final few minutes of her life, they came and brought me to the edge of the room and let me stand there while they were trying to resuscitate her. I have this terrible feeling in the pit of my stomach, and it reminds me of this. The helplessness. Nothing that we can do. There's no bigger wake-up call to how little control we have over life than impending death, or whether it's in the ICU of the hospital or whether I'm sitting in a park wondering what's going to happen to my friends, many of whom did not evacuate. They are staying and praying, so to speak. Not everyone can evacuate. Wondering, waiting, the silence before the storm, the calm before the storm. Grief is devastating, but not always. Many people begin grieving long before the actual loss occurs, as in right now with this hurricane that's looming over us. but also people who have family members who are sick. I wish I had words of comfort, and I feel like I should have words of comfort, but having been through this, not a hurricane, personally devastated, but to the loss of my daughter, I can tell you there are no words of comfort. The only thing that I can tell you is that some way, somehow, I did get through it. And it happens little by little and moment by moment. But we do get through things because we are stronger than we think. We're stronger because we have to be. We don't have a choice. We're not given the choice. Hey, do you want to be strong right now? No, we don't want to be strong. We don't want to deal with this. But when you're put in a situation where you have no choice, you will find that you're stronger than you think. It's too much to bear alone. Reach out to each other, love each other, help each other. It's the only way to get through it. But only because of my personal experience. And no matter what happens, and I don't know what's going to be waiting for me when I get home, I may have lost everything again. But I do know that somehow I will get through it. And so will you.